Looks like people are starting to join us. So hello and welcome to our webinar on Bluehill 1, 2, and Lite, your software's next steps. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Nick Erickson, your host for this webinar. Today I'm joined by Ashleigh Davis, one of our applications engineers. In this role, Ashleigh works with our customers to optimize testing, whether that's figuring out the best way to test a product or component, or putting together recommendations for improving throughput and repeatability. She's here to talk about Bluehill 1, 2, and Bluehill Lite. We're going to talk about the current status of these platforms, what that means for labs using them, and what migration to the latest software, Bluehill Universal, looks like. We expect the presentation should take around 20 to 25 minutes. And then if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A icon to submit these at any time. We'll aim to address these at the end. And I also want to mention that we are recording this webinar, and then all of you will receive an email afterwards with a link to the video, and it will also be available on demand on our website, instron.com. So with that said, I will turn things over to Ashleigh to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I'm going to go ahead, share my screen, get this PowerPoint up and running. All right, share. All right, let me switch this. All right. Again, thank you guys so much for joining. I'm Ashleigh Davis. I'm an applications engineer here, as Nick said. And today we're going to talk about 1, 2, and Lite in your software's next steps. So what exactly are we covering today? We're going to talk about the 1, 2, and Lite software status. I might refer to these as legacy software, just kind of lump them in to one general term. We're going to talk about Bluehill Universal features and the major changes coming from these legacy Bluehill platforms. I'm going to do a simple example workflow in Bluehill Universal. And then we're going to have time for questions. But again, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, my colleague Dan is in the chat and he should be able to answer some of those for you. If he can't get to them, we'll try and get to them at the end, or we'll try to reach out after the presentation. And I want to point out that in March, I actually did a presentation on Bluehill 3 to Bluehill Universal. So the way that our platform has worked, we've gone 1, 2, 3, and then Universal. If you're coming from 3, it's a little bit of a simpler process. There's not going to be as major of features that are being added on. You're welcome to stay and watch in case you'd like to see the demonstration of the Bluehill software, but I'm going to primarily focus on what's different from 1, 2, and Lite, so those much older legacy versions. And then, as I said, I'm going to do a workflow. It's going to be pretty simple, pretty high level, because we have so many different backgrounds of people that are watching. If you're looking to get a more in-depth, like tips and tricks of the Bluehill Universal software, Nick's actually going to put into the chat an older YouTube webinar that's about an hour. It's called Basics of Bluehill. It was done a couple years ago. So if you are looking to get, more of an in-depth look at what you can do within your methods or your test samples or your report templates, definitely check that out. I just want to set the expectation that today is going to be pretty high level. So if you are upgrading, it's not going to be too much of a shock coming to this more modern interface. So with that, though, let's talk about the status of these legacy softwares, 1, 2, and Lite. So Bluehill 1 was actually manufactured from 2001 to 2005. After that, Bluehill 2 came out. That was manufactured from 2005 to 2010. And then we have Bluehill Lite, which is our lower tier option for Bluehill 2 and Bluehill 3. And that was manufactured from 2006 to 2014. And all of these softwares, including Bluehill 3, have all been discontinued as of January 1st, 2022. So that means there are no updates, no additional features or enhancements, and tech support's going to be on a reasonable effort basis. And considering how old these softwares are, the longer that you go on using these softwares, if you were to run into any problems, unfortunately, that knowledge base is going to be leaving. Not everybody has utilized 1 and 2. So I just want to give a minor warning that we're not always going to have the people on hand who are familiar with these older versions of software. And the reason that we do upgrade our softwares, so 1, 2, Lite, 3U, is because we're trying to keep up with Windows. Windows is, updating every couple of years, and 1 and 2 and Lite dominantly run on XP and 7. We needed to create something that's compatible with Bluehill, with Windows 10, I apologize, and Windows 11, which Bluehill Universal is compatible with. But Windows XP and Windows 7 were discontinued in 2014 and 2020, respectively. And what that means is that, very similar to our own statement, that as a result, there are no new security updates, non-security hotfixes, free or paid assisted support options, or online technical content updates. And this comes direct from the Microsoft website. So essentially, put it simply, if your PC were to crash, Microsoft's not going to provide you any support. If your method files and sample files are only on that PC, that XP or 7 PC, and it crashes, all of that will be lost unless you happen to have a copy elsewhere, or if you're saving into like a network drive, part of like your company's system. But if you take anything away from today, it's that the best course of action is to proactively upgrade to prevent any major downtime. We don't want you to have any sort of major crash and cause any significant downtime within your lab. We want to get ahead of that. We want to help you out and make sure that your downtime is as little as possible and get you up and running with the secure Windows 10 or Windows 11 running with Bluehill Universal. So what is new? What's new within Bluehill Universal, especially coming from these older legacy platforms? First, and probably most exciting, as this was just released, is revision history. So I'll actually show this a little bit further within the software, but this now allows us to actually have a log of changes in our methods, our test samples, and our report templates, showing us what, when, and who changed something. Instron Connect. So this actually allows for a direct connection to our service support team. So you can directly request a support request. You can share your screen with tech support. You have access to your service history, and you can directly download any software updates. But this does require a network connection and IT permission. Next, we have Active Directory security. So maybe you're using basic Bluehill security within your software, which is where you set up a profile within Bluehill, and people log in using a password, and depending on what kind of permissions they have, they can either edit methods or they can only run tests. With Active Directory security, we now allow for network-based security permissions. So this is based on your user network permissions at your company. And again, this is going to be something that's going to be set up and run by your IT groups. So your user permissions are determined by what group you're a part of at your company, rather than individually set within the software itself. Quick test. Let's say you need to do a quick tensile or compression test. Maybe you just need a quick load, like peak load. This allows you to actually just run a quick tensile or compression test without the need for having to build a new method or edit an existing one. So pretty much grip and rip and spits out some very basic results for you. Modernized test profiler. So if you are doing cyclic testing or would like the capability to do so in the future, Test Profiler provides advanced functions such as looping, events and actions, and configurable data acquisition per step. So you can add ramps and holds, you can do cycle testing, but very powerful tool in terms of looking at like stepped testing. And then lastly, we have Expression Builder. So this is where you can actually build your own custom functions using variables, measurements from your data, and actually raw data. So All of these, I'm speaking very high level, but I have to say our product and our marketing teams have done a really awesome job of creating video collateral on all of these features. If you'd like to explore them a little bit further, they can be found either on our Bluehill Universal page or our Instron YouTube page. Recommend checking that out if you're wanting to get a little bit of a deeper insight into all of these features. But with that, let's actually like check out the software itself. So I'm going to stop sharing. And before we do jump into it, behind me is one of our systems. And part of Bluehill Universal is that it has been designed for our all-in-one touch PC. So our all-in-one touch PC can attach to most systems. And the reason that we did this is that we wanted to clear up lab space. You know, you don't need a PC tower and a monitor and a keyboard and mouse. This allows you to clear up space in your lab, but to also have you work within one cell. So you're able to utilize the software from here, load in the specimen here, and you stay within this little square. It's adjustable for people of different heights. I'm very short, so I can adjust it up and down for however I want. But totally great option if that is something that you're looking for. It does have all of the normal connections of a typical PC that you would see. So your HDMI, USB ports. So if you really did want to add like a wireless keyboard and mouse, you can do so. But everything within Bluehill has been designed so that it is ease of touch. Now, for the purpose of this demo, though, we've found that it's actually easier to share the software on our laptop. I want to make sure that you're actually able to see what I'm doing. Sometimes the ratio of the all-in-one over Zoom doesn't look quite great. So I'm just going to do the demo on my PC. But I do want to say as well, we exclusively use these within our applications lab. They're being used every day by a variety of different folks. And really, you know, great product if you are looking to clear up some lab space and get more of a modern interface for your lab. But let me go ahead and share my screen so we can actually see Bluehill. All right, get out of here. Great. Hopefully you can see that screen. Let me just make sure. I just want to make sure that we're getting everything. There we go. Okay. So here is our login for Bluehill Universal. I do just have like the standard active or the standard security right now. So I'm going to log in with my username and password as an admin. So as admin, I have access to everything within this screen. So here we see our home screen of Bluehill Universal. We have our test where we can actually, where we test all of our samples. Method, where we can go in and edit our method files. Analysis, that's if you, this is an optional module if you'd like to replay methods and tests that you had done previously with a different method. And then admin, which is where we obviously configure all of our settings of the software and the frame. So I'm going to go into test. Up top, this is where all of my methods would live. I'm running pretty simple. I only have one method up here. But we can also see this is where I could run one of those quick tests if I needed to do a quick tensile or compressive test. And then at the bottom is where I would see any previous sample files that I had tested. I can click on these eyes so I can get information on the results, on my ramp rates. I can get the location of the file, just a quick little preview. That way I don't have to open up the file if I'm curious about what was actually ran there. Let's get into it. Let's open up this tension method. I'm going to have a screen pop up just because I am running on my laptop in demonstration mode. It's just going to ask me to provide some data. So that way it runs properly. Of course, she's still waking up. It's early for her. There we go. So I had something open off screen. Select that. All right, so here is our Bluehill Universal Workspace. I have my graph, I have some operator inputs, I have some results down here, and then we have this pass fail, which I'll talk about. But I'm gonna go ahead and type in my lot ID, type in my part number. Sorry. And then within the software, I actually have something called choice inputs enabled. So if I have multiple operators that are running and you want to know who's actually running the sample files and they're always typing in their name, we can actually set up all of those users within the method itself ahead of time. So we just now have this nice drop down and we can select who we are. I apologize, I'm going to take a quick. All right. And then another part of choice inputs is that we can actually tie it into some of our test parameters. So I have a choice input related to my crosshead speed. I preset these rates earlier in my method, and I'm going to go ahead and select 150. So this eliminates the need for having like multiple methods with like multiple different test speeds. But also eliminating the need for having to actually like type in anything. I can type in my length if I want. You can see we have these nice pads that open up. So if you are working on the touchscreen, it's like a standard number pad, very easy to use. I'm just going to leave those as is and get this thing running. So we see I have live display occurring. We can see my displacement in the top left, my force in the top right. I could also add other variables such as time. All right, it's gonna think about that. And then at the bottom, it spits out my results. I have an indication on the graph of my max force. And then I actually have an average curve that I have enabled within the graph itself. I'm going to run a couple more. I'm going to run another one at 100. And then I'll talk about what's going on with this pass fail down here. And I apologize. All right, one more. We can see that average curve is actively updating as we're testing. All right. So pass fail down here, this is a new option within Bluehill Universal. We can see that in my maximum force column, I have this minus triangle, and then nothing here. So what I've actually done is I've indicated a set of parameters for my maximum force. And I have to be within certain bounds for my test specimen to pass this test. It's very easy for me to configure this, whether it's from this test screen or within the method itself. I for one, I don't like that I'm in kilonewtons. I want to update that. So we'll just go ahead and edit from here. I can click on the column and then I can select column properties. This opens up and this is where I can change my name of the column. I can set my units. I'm currently pulling in SI, but we have, standard US, or I'm sorry, I'm pulling in metric, but we can also pull in US and other types of units. I can change my rounding format. I can change my decimal places. And then this is where I've also set my failure bounds. So I have an upper bound of 2,500 newtons and a lower bound of 2,160 newtons. If I don't want to have that, it's easy to just toggle that off. I can toggle it back on, and we can see that it updates in live time. But I'll just toggle it off for now because maybe you're in a lab where you don't necessarily care about failure bounds. You're just spitting out data. I can close that, and then I don't need this pass fail window anymore. it's very easy to configure this. I can just go ahead and open this menu, edit the layout, and then I delete this. And then I exit layout editor. So now we just have a simple tinsel test that's spitting out my results with some basic operator inputs. As I said, very easy to configure. You can go in to like any one of these and edit the properties. You can change live what you want to see for your x-axis or your y-axis, or we could even get into it advanced. So for instance, I have an average curve. I'm not going to get too much more into this, but coming especially from those legacy Bluehills, this should feel more powerful and more and easier to use. Definitely more modern. So that's pretty much it in terms of like this screen. But let's say that I want to add another result. How easy is it for me to add another result? Well, I can edit this method either within the test sample file itself, or I could edit the method back in the method section of the software. Because I want to see what's going on within this sample file, I want to see that my updates are happening live time. I'm going to go into method. And this is where we have all of our sections that we could go deeper into and modify. I have measurements. So this is where I pull in my physical measurements or my virtual measurements. If you select one like force, it'll give you the type of measurement that it is on the right. You can select the kind of transducer. There's multiple things that you can add in, but the reason we care about measurements is because we're using those for our calculations. So I have maximum force, which I'm actually indicating on my graph. And I have Young's modulus, which I'm also indicating on my graph, but I want to go ahead and add an offset yield. So over here on my left are all of my available calculations. I'm going to go on down. I'm going to double click yield. I can either click it and use these arrows or just double click it. I can change the description. It automatically goes to 0 slope, but we have multiple options. And I want just a typical offset yield. And then I need to make sure that I have a proper parent selected. So I do need to pull in my Young's modulus. I'm going to keep 0.2%. That's pretty standard. And then I'm going to indicate this on the graph. If we come over here, so I actually have some new lines and some new markers that were added. We can also zoom in to things. We can also do, we can enable a data point selector so we can like see our X and Y for like certain areas. I can just go back, zoom to fit. Yeah, eliminate that data point selector. But my point being, I got a little off track. My point being is that that's indicated on the graph already, but I still need to get it into my results table. So I'm gonna go to method. I'm gonna go to workspace. Operator inputs, this is where I've set all of those inputs on that page. I come down to results. And then within my available results, I now have this yield offset because this talks directly to my calculations. And then I can pull in my force at yield offset. I just went ahead and double click that and it pulls it right over. We can adjust where it sits in the graph. And then we can go over to test and see, here it is. And we can see our force at yield with a 0.2% offset. And again, that's I don't like that that's in kilonewtons. I can either edit it here or I could edit it in the method. Make sure that's in newtons. Yeah, so pretty simple if you're looking to like edit the methods. If you're also looking to do that in real time, that way you can see how it affects the test. But I mentioned earlier revision history. I'm making all of these changes. How do I know what's actually happening over time within my lab? And so if we come up top here, we have this little stopwatch and we can open the method log. And it opened up on the wrong screen. Let me just grab it. There we go. So here is a log of everything that has ever happened to this method since I've created it within Bluehill Universal. It was created back in January. I've scrolled all the way down to the bottom and we see revision 1. And then we actually have the name of the person who was logged in at the time. So this is where security could come in handy because when you're logging in, your revision history is pulling in who's actually logged in at that time. We have the action, we have the affected item, the new value, and then the previous value. So for instance, if we just look at what I did on the 25th, oh, that was earlier today. I added yield zero slope earlier. I actually ended up removing it. But point being is that we see everything that's ever occurred. Now, the only thing about this though is that it's not a library of older revisions. It's merely just a log of older revisions. If you are looking to actually have the capability to download older revisions, like if I needed to go back to Rev 3 from February because something happened in production, that's something that's going to actually bleed into another product of ours called Bluehill Central, which has a traceability and a database that actually is able to handle revision history downloads. I'm not going to get into that too much. I think that coming from 1.2 and Lite is pretty significant as is. But if you are curious about Central, we do have also a lot of collateral on that as well. But I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to show that in the test as well, because revision history also works within the sample file. And again, it keeps opening up in the wrong screen. There we go. So it's tracked everything I've done here. If I were to save this, close it, reopen it, make other changes, that would just add another section within the revision history. But this comes standard with Bluehill Universal now, and it's just a really great way to maintain a log of everything, because I imagine there's a lot going on in labs. But anywho, moving on, let's talk about exports. So you still have we have the capability of exporting to PDF. We also have the capability of exporting to CSV files. Our reports, we do have some standard report templates for those PDFs that are provided, and you can edit those to make them, best for your needs. This is going to update in a second. It's just loading. It gives me a nice preview of my PDF report. Come on, there we go. So this is just a very basic report template that is provided with the software. There is another video on modifying report templates. You can add your company logo, pictures. You can make it so that every line gets its own graph. There's a lot that you can do, but I'm just showing the basics of today. But that's all I really have in terms of the software. I'm sure there'll be questions. I can't see them right now, but I'll try to get them to them at the end. I'm going to go ahead and just finish this sample. And when I hit this finish sample, what it's going to do is it's going to, it's going to ask me my output, what my file name is going to be. Today is Tuesday, April 25th. And that's going to save the sample file, create a PDF export, and then also create the CSV export, which can be either of my table and or my raw data. And one thing with the all-in-one, as I said, it's pretty much, it's an all-in-one. It's an all-in-one PC. It is capable of running Microsoft products such as Excel if you are looking to take those CSV files and analyze them after the fact. No, I'm good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and switch back on over to PowerPoint. actually, no, I'm not. I apologize. I'm going to go into the methods. So I showed you one method that I had built, but when you come to Bluehill Universal, within the methods, we see that I have a lot more here. And that's because we can create methods based either on existing templates. So we have like a tension method, a creep relax method, compression method. And the reason we have those is just so that the frame understands what direction we're going to be moving in, what kind of actions we're going to take. But let's say that you're primarily testing plastics. When you purchase Bluehill, when you upgrade to Bluehill Universal, you're going to have the option to select one of these application types. So we have adhesives, biomedical, composites, elastomers, metals, plastics, textiles, and torsion. So I'm going to select plastics. And what we've actually done is we have provided methods based on some of the most common plastic standards. So we see that we have ASTM D63814. I can just click on my information, and we can see that it's set my ramp rate and it's set my results table for me. Results that are going to be pertinent to that type of standard. And then it tells me I have actually a second results table and what report template I'm using. So when you upgrade, you get to select one of these, or you can select all of them. Maybe you're in a lab where you're testing multiple types of applications. You do have the option to have all of these for you. So I'll just click on a couple so we can see like what kind of standards we're playing with here. They're over here on the right. So there's bio. Let's click on metals. Oh, it's loading. I was gonna say. There we go. So a lot of metals. But I just wanted to mention that before I move on. All right, back to the PowerPoint. Oh, yes. I apologize. I have two screens and all right, here we go. Okay, you would think after years of doing online stuff, but that's all right. Okay, so you should see the slideshow now. Light status, we've already talked about that. What's new? Hopefully we covered all that. All right, workflow. Now, what does it look like upgrading from these legacy platforms? Unfortunately, because these are older software versions, methods from these legacy platforms are not going to transfer one-to-one to Bluehill Universal. There's potential maybe of Bluehill 2, you'll be able to open the files within Bluehill Universal, but there have been some nomenclature changes. There's been more that have changed, so you'll probably likely get a lot of errors when that happens. You know, as I said before, if you're coming here and you're on Bluehill 3, that upgrade is going to be much simpler. Those do transfer one-to-one, but coming from these older versions, again, they are not going to transfer one-to-one. So what we recommend doing is contacting your sales representative, and I'll show you at the end how to do that, to discuss options. So what's going to happen with the upgrade is that your field service engineer comes on site and they will help you to convert 5 methods. And it's very likely that that's going to have to be something that's manually done. So manually restarted over. But that's also why we provided you with those method templates, like the plastic standards, the metal standards. Because if you are testing with standards already, then those have pretty much already been created within Bluehill for you. But let's say that you have more than 5 methods. Maybe it's only 8 methods, or maybe you have 20 plus methods. Again, this will be something you'll want to talk to your sales representative about. If your field service engineer is changing 5, and they're training you on how to actually convert methods, hopefully the rest of them you should be able to handle on your own. But if you have dozens more that you need to upgrade, then that could be a conversation about an additional purchase such that we transfer those for you. Again, everybody's going to have a different situation. Would definitely have an open conversation with sales, and hopefully they will get you on the best path forward. And then you're probably wondering, what is Bluehill Universal compatible with? So here are all the frames that the software is compatible with currently. Systems, if you do not see your frame on this list, you might have an option to retrofit to a newer control system. I can actually pull up the website and show the retrofits section, so you can determine if you do have that option. But again, it's going to be a conversation with sales. And just as a reminder, the best course of action for your lab is to proactively upgrade in order to prevent major downtime. If you do have a lot of methods, you want to get ahead of trying to get them, think about how they're going to be converted, rather than have a full-blown crash and having to get everything up and running quickly. So it's a lot of stress. So what we did today, we reviewed the status of legacy Bluehill, and how staying on discontinued software can leave your lab at risk for downtime. Highlighted some major features within Bluehill Universal. The quick demonstration of Bluehill Universal. Hopefully it's not as daunting now that we've seen it. Talked a little bit about next steps for upgrading, and then hopefully we answered all your questions. Hopefully Dan's been getting to your questions. I'll certainly take a look at them. But with that, next steps are going to be, Nick's going to put another link within the chat. If you have questions about cost, I cannot answer that. I'm going to say that right now. Or if you have additional questions or want to see like another demo of the software more based on like your specific needs, with the link that Nick provides, you can select contact sales in that shared link and fill out the information, and a local sales representative for your area will reach out to you. And some of them even have the possibility to visit your site. So with that, again, hopefully it doesn't feel too daunting. I'm going to go ahead and end the PowerPoint and check out the Q&A. All righty. So, all right, Nick put those in the chat. A common question that we get is there any training? So part of the upgrade package with going to Bluehill Universal, that is going to include training from your field service engineer. As I said, they're going to help you to convert 5 of your method files. Part of that is also training on how to convert any other files that you may have, but also training on the software itself. In addition to that, you'll talk to sales about how many people you want trained, and then you'll have all your operators trained on the software. But we also do offer additional classes. We have an entire training center here. We can do virtual training. We have on-site training, or you could purchase additional training through your field service engineer to come back on site. So, additionally, another question, do you have to have Instron Connect? You do not need to have Instron Connect. Understandably, not all IT groups want to have frames connected to a network. Instron Connect is an option, but it's a very powerful option. It's something that puts you directly in contact with tech support, and having that screen sharing can be very effective. If it's difficult to communicate what's going on, they can get a view of your screen and hopefully help you out much more efficiently. So with that, I think that should be it. I'm actually real quick though, I do want to show. So as I mentioned, these products were phase 4. If you're not getting any kind of like indication of like what phase your products are in, there is a page on our website, so you can determine if like anything else in your lab might be discontinued. So if we go to the homepage and we go to service and support, we select product lifecycle. And it talks a little bit about our product lifecycle policy, the difference between 1, 2, 3, 4, and goes into detail. No. And then you're going to want to select this visit out of production system section. And then this is where we can look at your your electromechanical testing systems, rheometers, software, accessories, for instance. Let's look at accessories real quick. If we open accessories, we have certain chambers that are discontinued, extensometers. If you have a first generation AVE or SVE, those are also out of production, and those actually won't work with Bluehill Universal. So there's a lot of factors in upgrading to Windows and Windows 10 and Universal. But another thing, before I pass it over to Nick, if we click on this electromechanical testing system, so for instance, the 5900 series, that was our last series of frames before our newer system, 6800 and 3400. When it tells you the model, it tells you your support phase, and then it will tell you if your system's available to be retrofitted. So there's going to definitely be some 4400s that are not going to be able to be retrofitted, but you might have the possibility of a trade-in. But something to take into consideration. That's going to be something that probably sales brings up, just as a warning. Coming from these older softwares is a little more intense than coming from Bluehill 3. So with that, Nick, I am done. I'm going to toss it on over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ashleigh. So before we wrap things up, I just have a couple quick notes, reminders. So any questions that continue to kind of come in, we're going to follow up with those individuals by email. And then just a reminder that we are recording this, so I'll email each of you a copy of today's recording and slide deck. And then the last thing I want to mention is about one of our upcoming webinars. So on May 17th, we're hosting a session on how to optimize your lab management with Bluehill Central. That's our lab management software that was released last year. I'm actually dropping a link into the chat now, so you can see any of our upcoming webinars and also our full library of on-demand webinars, which stretches back for years and years. So there's a lot of great content in there, similar to the other webinar that Ashleigh had mentioned, to learn the basics of Bluehill. All that stuff is in that list and it's available on our YouTube channel. So with that said, I just want to say thanks to Ashleigh for presenting to you, or for presenting today, and thanks to all of you for attending. Really appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you again next time. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.